Welcome to the Balanced Hairstylist podcast, where mental health and the beauty industry meet. I am your host, Sarah Beck. This episode today is all about grief in our beauty spaces, whether it's learning how to hold space when a client has lost someone or figuring out and navigating how to show up when we are grieving ourselves. I am joined today by Jefri Franks, a grief counselor, speaker, and author who helps people move through loss with compassion and authenticity. Together, we're going to dive into what it means to truly listen instead of fix, how to let go of needing to find those perfect words, and how to stay present and grounded even in emotional moments behind the chair. So take a breath, settle in, and let's get into it with Jefri Franks. Today, we have a really special guest, Jefri Franks. She is a master's level counselor and certified professional grief coach based in Kansas City. Jeffri's journey into this work is deeply personal, shaped by her own lived experience with grief and healing. Over the years, she has spoken to audiences, authored the book Heather's Journey, and worked one-on-one with people navigating loss. Her passion is helping others move through grief in a way that allows them not just to cope, but to truly flourish. Jefri, thank you so much for being with us today.
Sarah, it's my pleasure. So looking forward to talking with you.
Me too. So, in our industry, we often build relationships with our clients, right? We get close with our clients and we're often walking alongside of them throughout life. Sometimes we have our clients for 5, 10, 15 years. And so some of those moments are not always great moments that we walk them through. And one of those is grief. And it's sometimes hard for us to know how to be there for our clients when they are dealing with grief, when they have lost a loved one, because we have somewhat of an intimate relationship, but we also don't want to overstep our boundaries. And also at the same time, we don't want to overstep our boundaries as well. So in our industry, is there advice that you could give us in a way to be able to be there for our clients in a healthy way for the client and for us?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it brings up a couple of things. First of all, I think it's really important when you have someone who is grieving and you are there not to make the job too big. So it's not for you to make it all better. It's not for you to solve it. Grief is a journey, not a question to be answered. And so I think the most important thing is that the grieving person feels your presence, that you might be there listening, and listening is a very, very powerful gift to give someone. I remember through my own journey that when someone could really just listen to me, it was extremely powerful. And also, I think it's important to let that grieving person take the lead. So if, they're telling you that they've lost someone or they're kind of introducing the topic, some good things to say might be, I'm so sorry to hear this. I'm so sorry for your loss. Or this must be incredibly hard. Then if the person wants to tell you more, then they will start talking. And again, I think the power of listening is incredibly strong. And you don't have to have the perfect things to say. I think I was in a group of mothers who had lost their children, and we were at a retreat. And the number one thing that we all said to a group of doctors and nurses and medical professionals was, if we can see that you're really making an effort to listen to us and to understand where we are, we can forgive a lot. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to say there's not this perfect thing for you to say. So take that weight off of yourself and just know that caring about that person, listening, and, telling them that you're very sorry that they're going through this is extremely powerful.
You said something that really, I think a lot of people could relate to, which is you don't have to be perfect or say the perfect thing. I think when we're with our clients, w- our, part of our jobs is to make one of the things that we love to do is to make people look and feel good.
Mhm.
And so we often have this thing of wanting to make people feel good. And so when people are facing grief, we want to say the perfect thing or
Mm.
do the perfect thing so that they are comfortable when they're with us. And I think that what you said is you don't have to be perfect or say the perfect thing gives a lot of grace to know. And it sounds like maybe just sitting and being an active listener and maybe not relating or not fixing or not
Yeah,
giving advice and just actively listening, which means that we have to kind of sit back and be okay with not necessarily being a part of the conversation, but just listening in that part of the conversation.
yeah.
Um, and I think that is such a great thing to say is that we don't have to be perfect and maybe just being there is enough.
It's huge. And the other thing I think about is that not everyone can hear about people's grief. And it doesn't mean they're bad or, you know, we need to judge them. It just simply means they don't have that. And so it might be important in a hair salon to kind of talk about this and find out in your group who is comfortable and who is not so comfortable. So that if something arises and you have someone who's really not comfortable, someone else can kind of come in and be that listener.
So, are there common well-meaning things that people say that are actually not helpful that maybe we could avoid or, say something else instead?
Yeah, I think the language needs to change a little bit when you've got this situation. Um, we're very, very used to saying, "How are you?" That's just our common cultural exchange. And if you know that somebody is going through a really, really difficult time, it might be easier for them if you said something like, "How has your time been since last time I saw you?"
Uh,
Gives them the opportunity to talk about it or not talk about it. They can say, if they don't want to talk about it, they can say, "It's been fine." If they do, you've given them a little bit of an opening.
uh,
Um, yeah. So, and again, don't worry about being perfect. How are you is going to slip out of your mouth no matter how hard we try. I have done it. And
I'm
I'm
just,
so aware of it, but
yeah,
I have done it, and then thought, "Oh, that wasn't the best question I could have asked." Um, but yeah, I can think of one thing that I absolutely would not say. I use myself as an example. When my daughter was having her cancer treatment, my sister-in-law bought me a facial. So I went to the salon and I was having the facial, and I don't know what prompted it, but I just started sobbing.
uh,
And the poor woman was great in one aspect in that she put everything down and she kind of took me in her arms, which was lovely. And I got to kind of cry it out. But she said to me, "Whatever it is, it's going to be all right." So the problem with that, we want to say it because we want everybody to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is sometimes things don't go the way you want them to. And so at the time, my daughter's health was really going downhill. So it was kind of hurtful to hear everything's going to be all right. Yeah,
Hmm.
because no one knows. So that's just the one thing I think I wouldn't try and put in the conversation. One thing you can say along those lines is, and I used to say this to my daughter, wherever this is going, we're going together. So, if you want to befriend or you want to walk along with this person, that's a very wonderful thing to hear
Mm.
is no matter where this is going, we're going there together.
That's beautiful.
Or I'm here. No matter
Yeah.
where this is going, I'm here.
Yeah. That could be a great thing, especially if you are closer with a client and have been with them a long time and
Yeah.
there is uncertainty.
Yes.
Whatever happens, I will be here for you.
Yes. And by saying everything will be all right, it kind of can be interpreted by the person as, well, maybe you won't be able to handle it if it goes badly.
Mm.
Maybe you're only here and can only be here for me if things go well, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. One thing that I thought of when you were talking about, for whatever reason, you were able to really cry it out in
Mm,
that moment.
mm,
There's studies done about how physical touch can help release emotions, and oftentimes we are in close proximity with our clients physically, but we're also physically touching them. Sometimes a scalp massage, and sometimes you're going from one thing to a next in our lives, and we
mm.
sit down in our hairstylist chair, and it's this first moment of like, whew,
Oh,
and then someone touches you, and then all
mm,
these things come up. And so
yeah.
it's happened to me before where a client has really lost it, and I just sat, and what I did was I put my hands on their shoulders, and then I grabbed a stool and I sat next to them instead of like being over them. I
Mm,
just kind of sat next to them, but I wasn't facing them,
mm.
and I let them have a moment.
And I love what you did. I love that you sat down on equal footing with them instead of being above them. I think that's great. And you touched them and kind of held them by the shoulders. And that, to me, that would say, I'm here.
Mhm,
And those are two very powerful words. I'm here.
mhm.
You didn't have to say them, you did them in that case. Um, and then did the person kind of cry for a while and then were you able to go on?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Speaking on that, I wanna share something with you that I think I've shared before with you, Jeffrey, is, um, recently, a client came in with some very bad health news, and I had seen her for a while, and I could tell something was going on, and she was asking when the appointment was gonna be done, which is kind of unlike her,
Uh,
and I just said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "I had a really bad doctor's appointment today. I got some bad news." And so I said to her, "Why don't we reschedule? It seems like it's really hard for you to be here right now, and I understand that." And so we have gotten in our industry in a good way to have a lot of cancellation policies and rules and things like this around our time, which is great. But I also think it's important to remember in these moments that we have to have humanity first and our hearts first, and not worry about the money that appointment was slotted for, knowing that that's the right thing to do.
uh,
And so I think that's something I just wanted to share in these moments of grieving, whether it's a person or news or things like that, we have to be able to give our clients what they need in that moment.
I would completely agree. And being someone who was in heavy grief at one time, I can tell you that I went to a dental appointment that I thought I was ready for and I thought I could do it. And I got to the outside of the building and burst into tears. And I just knew that I could not have someone in my mouth.
Hmm.
And it just happened right then and there. I happened to know the receptionist really well. She leaned out the window and saw me and she said, "Hi, how can I help you?" And I just said, "I'm so sorry. I need to cancel. I thought I could do it, but I can't." And she said, "No worries. We will reschedule you and we'll talk to you about some potential dates," and just took me right off the hook,
Mm.
which is absolutely the thing to do. And sometimes I think given that option, it may be surprising how when you get the opportunity, when you get the choice to cancel, sometimes that allows you to go ahead and have the appointment
Mm.
because okay, if I can't do this, I don't have to.
That there's grace there.
Yes. Sometimes they may say, yeah, I had no idea this was going to happen and I really do need to reschedule, but it offers a freedom to give that option.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
What about, we often share our clients are often in the same group of friends or family. And so we often hear through the grapevine, that there was a loss in the family or something like that. How do we handle it if we've already heard about
Mm.
it? But,
Yeah.
do we say, I'm sorry? Do we acknowledge it? Do we let it sit and let the client decide if they want to share how?
Wow. Okay. Right off the bat, I want to say wait until they tell you. But if you have a client that you are very, very close to and you've known them, like you say, sometimes these relationships are 20 years,
Hmm.
um, you're probably going to know what the right call is
Mm.
with that person. I would go by the relationship that you have and kind of the sense of it that you get. If you're not sure, I think I would let them bring it up because coming to your salon and getting this wonderful service from you may be a vacation from whatever it is for them. And they may want to revel in that and have the space with you not be a place where this is going on. So that's something to kind of think of. I remember going to my hairstylist and Heather was in the hospital and I would be there all week. And then my husband would come on the weekend and I would go home and then we would start all over again. And so one weekend when I went home, I set up a haircut and I went in and I knew this guy really well and we always had a good time. And I went in and I sat down and I said, "Randy, I can't talk. I can't talk." And he was great. He said, "Okay." And he didn't make a sound.
Mm.
And I just needed that time to be a time where I'm resting.
Mm. I think that's really beautiful and maybe gracious to have a space where it's not a part of your conversation,
Yeah.
which maybe it was a part of your every moment to
Yeah.
not have that for a minute.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you asked that. I think one thing that could happen with us as hairstylists is if there is a moment where we find out I lost someone that I love dearly, maybe on our side it could be, I'm so sorry. Just know this appointment is however you want to use it today. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. If you want to sit in silence, I'm okay with that. If you if you want to talk about something else, we can do that as well. So to allow that to have some grace for your client to meet them where they need that day.
If you said that all those things to me, I would love you. Yes, that is great. That's
Mm,
great. I mean, you are putting that person above all else. And this is a person, if they've had a loss, who is struggling, and you're acknowledging that and you're okay with it and you're offering them a huge gift.
mm.
Yeah, I love that.
I think too, once we say something to our clients like, I am so sorry to hear. This must be so hard for you. It takes a moment for us because I think we're chatting all day usually
Huh?
that we're going to go to somewhere else to not only ask that question, what do you need today out of this appointment, but also to be able to sort of settle our nervous systems a bit to
Mm,
where we don't feel like we have to fill the space. And it's sometimes really hard because, again, we want to make people look and feel good to be able to sit in sometimes silence and also discomfort, knowing that our client is hurting.
uh-huh.
And that's, you know, sometimes as people pleasers and fixers, that's hard for us to sit with. And there's almost like what you said in the very beginning, Jeffrey, of just sitting there and just being there with a person is enough. It takes a little bit of work for us and our nervous systems to be able to settle in those moments and not feel like we have to
Yeah,
fix or
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that might be helpful is if someone is grieving and they say, this is what's going on, and you say, I'm so sorry to hear this, or whatever, however you respond, to do a little breathing at that point and let yourself take in, 3 or 4 breaths, long breaths, and then exhale them. You can do it quietly. So the client doesn't necessarily know what's going on. And then usually, I think if you allow that silence, the client will then come back in and they'll either route the conversation a different way, or here's what I want with my hair today, or they'll maybe continue down that road. But that space and that grace, you're allowing them to decide, okay, where do we go now?
Mhm.
I've got a person who can listen. I've got a person who can handle the fact that I'm really going through something awful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So say a little something to do for you,
Mhm.
just a little something to put your attention on and to help relax you. Maybe some deep breathing, a little bit of deep breathing.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Wonderful advice.
And if they
I
don't come back in,
Mhm.
I think you can say something like, what do you think? Would you like to start on your hair?
An invitation.
Yeah.
It's an invitation
Yeah.
and not a, "All right, let's go."
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
Exactly.
Um, Speaking of that, sometimes, especially us empaths and sensitive souls, um, we really feel the pain of other people. And how, do you have any advice on how we don't necessarily, because what happens is, unfortunately, like this client who is grieving might leave. And then we have another client come in who might say, I just got a new job. And so we're on this roller coaster.
Yeah.
So, especially for us feelers who have a tendency to sometimes even absorb
Yeah.
emotions and feelings from our clients, do you have any advice on how to let that us feel it, but then move through it?
Yeah. The same thing actually that I would tell um, a client of mine who is grieving. I would say, get it out of your body. So when you go home that night, maybe it's your husband, maybe it's a good friend, whoever that person is that you can talk to about these things. Talk about the day.
Mm,
Talk about Man, it was like a seesaw. I had one woman who lost someone really close to her and she was really struggling. And then the next minute, I had somebody who just got this fabulous promotion and she was all excited. And I'm worn out or I'm whatever, whatever you're feeling.
Mhm.
If not that, I would journal it. Write in your journal, write down how you feel about it, get everything out on the paper. And it's kind of it's a dump of the bucket. You guys get it from working all day and you're pretty soon your bucket is getting full. I'm 24 years post Heather's death, and there are times when I still need to dump the bucket because there will always be times where I'm triggered by something, who knows what. But yeah, it's the action of moving it from your heart and your soul and your mind out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that idea. I think even sometimes I have a stack of Post-it notes and I keep it in my little cabinet, but you could keep it in a break room or something. And if you have a few minutes or even maybe take a few minutes between your next client, even just writing down the feelings that you had and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm just heartbroken for this
Yes.
person. This made me so sad." Writing it down on a Post-it and even just tossing it, like, kind of not to say that you're throwing that person's feelings
Yeah.
away, but just
Yeah.
to kind of move it out your body, as you say. Is that what you said? Get it out of your
Out of
body.
your body.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That would work great.
And that way you can, you journal and talk to people in your life
Mhm.
after work, but then that way you have a tool right then and there during your day.
I love that. And then maybe after you throw that away, you do a couple of deep cleansing breaths to kind of reboot yourself.
When is it appropriate to refer a client to a grief counselor or support group, or even a mental health
Hmm.
professional?
Yeah.
And how do we do that tactfully?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I think it's kind of not always obvious as to when that might need to be. But I certainly would say if you know someone and you're seeing them on several occasions and they seem that the grief seems to be really, really intense. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, "Hey, I was just wondering, have you ever thought about talking with someone who's a professional in grief?" And just asking the question. The person, you don't know what the response is going to be. They might say, "No, I'm not going to do that," blah, blah. Or that might kind of give them the idea to start thinking about it. And you're asking out of concern.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I think go by the relationship, go by your feelings, go by your intuition on this as to when or whether to ask that question.
Mm.
And you're not saying, "I think you are really doing badly and I think that you need to go to a grief counselor." That's a
Mhm.
whole different ballgame.
Mhm.
You're just posing the question, have you ever thought about, do you think that might help or do you think that might make your journey easier? So it's an inquiry.
Again, it feels like an invitation.
Yes, exactly. Invitation is a great, great word.
Mm.
Yeah. And you're inviting even a conversation about that.
I
You're
was
inviting them to say, "Well, I don't know, or I don't know anyone, or I've never done it," or, whatever the case may be. But I love your word that it's an invitation.
Mhm. I don't necessarily have a ton of resources on grief in my at my ready all the time, but I do always have several therapist cards in my station. And so sometimes I will say to clients, depending on the situation and depending on if it's starting to feel very heavy for me, I might say, if I don't know if you've ever thought about going to see someone, I have a great referral right here. And so then you have something right
Yeah.
then and there to give to them.
I think that's a good
Um,
idea.
if they accept the
Right.
invitation, if they're open to that.
Yes, exactly.
Um, okay, so this has been really helpful for helping us to understand how to be able to be there for our clients when they are going through grief. Now, I'd like to ask you about what happens when we, as hairstylists, are grieving
Mm,
someone.
mm,
Um, Specifically, a lot of us feel like we have to be on
uh-huh,
at our jobs all the time,
uh-huh.
put on a happy face, even if we're hurting.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for us to show up authentically, but still providing a good service?
So, a couple things come up here. Some really important issues come up here. One of them is boundaries. And by that, I mean you are the captain of your grief journey. So if you have a day where you just know it's bigger than you are, and there are days like that, at the extreme, you might have to rearrange appointments and take care of you. The other thing I would say is that, so it brings up boundaries, and then it also brings up self care. And when you are in the process of grieving, I think one of the most important things to cultivate is self care. That is you being there for you scanning your body, scanning your heart and your soul. What do you need? And how can I give that to you? If you're okay to go through your day, then go and be there for your clients. It might be one of those days where you're walking into the break room and you're taking that pad of paper and you're writing down, man, this is hard. I'm smiling and I'm being there for my clients, but I feel terrible,
Mm.
and throw it in the trash. And that night, dump it. Yeah, I would say very, very similar principles apply. And you, being the captain of your own grief ship, do not have to talk to anyone about it if you don't want to.
Mm.
It's yours. It's your journey. It's your precious experience. And there will be people that you want to share it with, and there will be people that you don't. And that's completely and totally your call. Doesn't doesn't mean you're not being nice. It's nothing about being nice. It's about respecting your own boundaries. And if someone has heard that you lost someone and they say, "Oh, I heard you lost your father. I'm so sorry." And if you don't want to talk about it, you can say, "Thank you so much. I appreciate it." And then a little breath and, "So what are we doing today?" And you move it on. And they'll pick up the signal, hopefully, and move forward with you. But you
Mm.
don't owe your grief journey, your story to anybody.
I think I think a lot of us will find this to be powerful because I think to some degree we feel like clients have certain access to us,
Mm.
and having that autonomy of knowing you are the captain of your own grief journey is such a wonderful thing to say, and you get to decide. This is
Yes,
your journey
you
and
do.
no one else's.
Yes. And you do it your way with whom you choose to do it with.
Sometimes I like to recommend sending an email, because it feels like sometimes we're having the same conversation over and over again, which can be very mentally draining
Yeah.
and emotionally draining. An idea is to have an email to all your clients that say, I recently lost my father. We'll just say that as an example. And it's been a very difficult time for me. I would, appreciate the conversation steering away from that as I'm going through my grief or something like that. Would you recommend something like that?
Absolutely. I love that because you're being upfront, you're being proactive. So you're really setting the scene before anything even happens. And you're just letting people know where you are and what your preferences are.
Mhm.
And so people know, hey, I don't want to talk about this.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you could say, I love what you were saying. And then at the end you could say, I'm here for you.
Mm.
And when you come sit in my chair, I want to talk about you and what we're going to do for you.
Mhm. Ending it on a positive note.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I think that takes all the guesswork away from everybody because you've stated it.
I think sometimes hairstylists will fall on a spectrum where they might send an email and say, I don't want to talk about this at all. And then you might find the hairstylist that sometimes we can be verbal processors,
Mm.
I like to say, where we're sharing a lot. If a stylist does choose to share their grief journey with their clients, how can they do it in a way where it feels genuine to them, but it doesn't become too much for the client, if that
Mm,
makes sense?
mm.
Like where it's actually emotionally dumping on them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great boundary statement that you just made. Um, yeah, I think that if you want to talk about it, or even if you want to talk about it with just certain people that you really know well and trust, I think that's great. I think saying just a little bit and them maybe commenting a little bit and then saying, I'd love to talk with you about this more. Is there a time we could get together and take it out of the salon?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you want to,
Hmm.
if you want to.
Or even an option too could be another invitation of saying, I'd love to tell you more.
Mhm.
Would you be open to that? Or would it be better for us to change a subject?
Oh,
Giving
that's
them
great.
sort of an invitation and a
Yeah,
choice. Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yes. I was also thinking about something that meant a lot to me when I was going through Heather's illness. There was a person in my church that sent a card to me and one to Heather every week. It didn't say much. They were kind of funny. And I got to the point where I really looked forward to them.
Mm.
It's just a little tiny thing, but it was a reach out to me and a reach out to Heather, and it was consistent. And it really was wonderful. So there are lots of ways you can support someone that, don't necessarily mean you're by the bedside, having the intense conversations. There are a lot of ways that you can support someone.
I think to that note, if I always like a handwritten note, I'm not always good about sending them. But um, if your client comes in and says, I just lost someone, and they're not wanting to talk, like however they end up sharing it with you, a little note just saying I'm thinking of you would be really lovely.
I
Just
agree.
to send a little handwritten note.
Yeah. Those mean more than people realize they do.
Mhm.
Um, if you're the one sending it, you feel like, oh, it's so little. It's just not hardly anything I'm doing here. It doesn't take much time. But to the recipient, it's huge.
Mm.
It's really, really lovely.
I have a question here that I feel like we already kind of answered,
Okay.
but um, in the beauty culture, there's often pressure to be upbeat and energetic. How can we challenge that norm in a way that promotes mental health?
I think upbeat and energetic are great if that's how you're feeling. Um, I think that forced upbeatness um, is not good, and people can often tell. Um, Personally, I'm more attracted to authenticity. And, a smile is one thing. It's important that you smile at your client and, those kinds of things. But to feel like you have to put on an act, I think is entirely a different thing. It's okay to not be having your best day. You can still smile, but you don't have to, tap dance and do the whole routine. I think that clients know that you're human. And yeah, I think authenticity is actually what a lot of people are craving.
I love that answer. And I think this is a good question. How can we help as a salon
Hmm.
or as our peers if a hairstylist is going through grief? How can we support each other when one of our own is experiencing loss?
I would go by what kind of relationship you have with that person. So if you are people that work together and say hi and minimal conversation, you might want to send a card. If you're someone who is pretty close to that person, you might want to personally check in. I think I would have the relationship dictate what you do. Yeah, I mean, it's not everyone can have the really intense conversations about what's going on. And um, if that's not your relationship, it can come off as a little false when all of a sudden now it is, but it never has been, if that makes any sense. So I would go to the level of the relationship that you have with that person. I would keep it consistent. And, with an invitation, love your word, invitation, with an invitation for them to um, tell you more that you're here. Yeah, I'm here. In some way, communicate, I'm here.
I think sometimes too, our break rooms can be not necessarily relaxing. It can be lots of chatter, which is great. But I think if it were me, knowing that it's a lot for me emotionally to be with my clients all day, let alone if I'm going through grief and then getting in the break room. I'm just thinking, maybe it could be an offer or even an ask as a hairstylist to say, I'm really I'm really having a hard time right now. I would be grateful if we could have a little bit more peacefulness in the break room for me to be able to go back there and really decompress.
Yep, I like that a lot. That's all part of self-care. That's asking for what you need. And I think we don't do that very well. I think we're afraid of what people are going to think. We're afraid of conflict, whatever it might be. But the way you just delivered that was lovely. You weren't as aggressive. You didn't turn me off at all. You just said, "Hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I really need." And that's wonderful. Yeah, self-care, it's really big.
It's a big deal in all aspects of life, but I
Yeah.
imagine in grief it is just very, very important.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Yes.
Jeffrey, you are wonderful to share your
Oh,
wisdom with us
thank
today.
you.
Do
Thank
you
you.
have anything else that you want to share with us? Any thoughts or feelings that came up that you didn't get to share?
Oh, I think just, life is a series of either I'm going through a struggle or you're going through a struggle. And I just think the the act of being there for someone else is such a beautiful thing. When I was going through Heather's illness and death, I had to be there. I had to go through it. This was my daughter. people that supported me didn't have to be there. They chose to walk into my very messy, dark world. And I feel like there's really no way to repay them other than remembering how precious that was and giving it forward to people in my life that need it here on out. It's a huge, huge gift. I don't know that there's anything greater we can give to one another, holding one another up.
It's beautiful. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But
Mm.
I was lucky to have that girl at all. I had 12 wonderful years with her. And now I do this.
Mm.
Oddly enough.
Which leads me to my next question
Yeah.
is how can people work with you? How can people find
Oh,
you?
I love that. People can find me at my website, which is griefcoachjefri.com. And my name is spelled Jefri, so one F, griefcoachjefri.com. When you go to my site, there's a contact button to hit. It'll have you fill out just a little information and you send it to me. And then I will respond and we will set up a time to get together. And I do a 45-minute free consult before I ever start coaching so that people can get a feel for me and I can get a feel for them. I think that's really important that we fit well together. You can also order the book I wrote, Heather's Journey. You can order it from my website. There's a tab for my book.
Great. I think the world of you, and I think what you're doing is so important, and you can tell it's so comes from your heart. It's
Yeah.
so heart-centered, and um I admire how you have turned what is a horrible
Mhm.
event to what you're doing, and I I think you're pretty remarkable.
Sarah, thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
This is my chance to redeem something that was pretty terrible, but I get to make good out of it. And I love doing that. And I love what you're doing, Sarah,
Mm.
that you are looking at your industry through this lens and you are offering help and support for people that deal with grieving people. Nobody teaches us this in school. It's not something even that our culture talks about very much. So I applaud you for giving it a platform and helping your fellow hairstylists.
Thank you for saying that.
You're
That's
welcome.
very kind of you. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You're
Again,
welcome.
I thought this conversation was not only so important, but just very close to my heart. So I just appreciate you sharing and being open and just bringing your wisdom to us. To my fellow hairstylists out there listening, I hope this conversation reminds you that you don't have to carry this alone, that you don't have to be perfect, and showing up for our clients is just enough. And also remember to take care of yourselves in all of this as well. If you want to learn more about Jefri, her work, and how you can get in touch with her, I'm going to link her book and also her website so that you can check out her coaching. If you are going through grief right now or know a client that's going through grief, I think it would be a remarkable gift to be able to work with Jefri through these times.
Thank you, Sarah.
Um, yeah, yeah. This is my first podcast, so I'm gonna link it below, but I'm gonna figure out how to link it below.
And I'm so excited that I was your first guest.
You're my first guest. It felt so just grounding and calming, and it felt just very comfortable. That's what I was trying to say. Very comfortable.
Me too.
So thank you for being my first.
You are so welcome.
And as always, thank you for tuning into the Balanced Hairstyles podcast. Until next time. What a powerful and heartfelt conversation. Huge thanks to Jefri Franks for joining us and for sharing her wisdom and reminding us that grief is a journey. A few takeaways from today that I loved was we don't have to be perfect or know the perfect thing to say to show up for our clients. And that sometimes listening is one of the most powerful gifts that we can give. The other thing that I really took away was if we are grieving, that it is okay to take care of us and that we don't have to have the same conversation over and over again, and that we get to take care of us, to remember to care for our own needs and our own hearts. You can learn more about Jeffri's work and find her book, Heather's Journey, at griefcoachjeffrey.com. The link is in the show notes. If this episode spoke to you, please do all the things: subscribe, comment, like, and most importantly, share it with your fellow hairstylists and beauty professionals. We need to bring mental health more to the forefront of our conversations in the beauty industry. Until next time, I'm Sarah Beck. And remember, we don't have to do this alone. We're in this together. All right, but before we wrap up, your friendly reminder that I am not a licensed therapist. I am a fellow hairstylist and beauty professional sharing tools and stories and encouragement to help us all feel a little bit more balanced in our mental health. Think of this podcast as an inspiration and not a replacement for professional care. If you're struggling, please reach out to a mental health professional because you deserve real support and you don't have to do this alone. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys next time.